A-hole roommates tries to rob me, so I destroy everything he owns. I'm currently traveling through Europe and I just got robbed by one of my hostel roommates. First, I arrived at the hostel and after checking in, I realized that the latch on my locker was broken. I had a padlock, but since the latch was broken I had no way to actually lock my locker. I went and reported this to the reception and they said that they would get maintenance to check it out. I'm over a month into my Europe trip and I've had great roommates so far, so despite the locker still not locking I figured it wouldn't be so bad. On the second day I left the hostel around 11 o'clock in the morning and did not return until around 6 o'clock. When I got back I instantly noticed my stuff had been gone through since zippers were left open, Ziploc bags were unzipped, and other stuff was misplaced. I quickly went through my stuff to check if anything was stolen. Everything was still there, however, when I checked my wallet it was a different story. In my wallet I had Brazilian reals and euros and what a coincidence. All my euros were gone, but my Brazilian reals were still there. Luckily, I only lost around 100 euros, because I had another compartment in my bag where I had much more cash. I quickly went to reception and reported the incident and the staff took the matter very seriously, but since it was cash, it was basically impossible for me to get that money back. I had my suspicions on who the culprit was because my other roommates have mentioned having problems with this one guy we'll call Bob for the past week. He was extremely rude, would come home intoxicated every night, started drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning, pissed all over the toilet seat, left water trails all throughout the dorm area, smoked in the room and was all around just a menace. I was also pretty close with the others, so it was pretty easy to rule them out, as I didn't think they would steal from me. For clarification, the dorm was a 6-bed. So there was me and 5 other roommates. After having my cash robbed I knew I wasn't going to leave without having my locker locked. So me and one of my roommates helped me find a way to lock it and we found that if we lift up the locker we were able to line it up with a part of the bed where we could stick a lock through. Then, me and the 3 other roommates set a trap by placing a €5 bill under a pillow positioned in a place where it's hidden, but still obviously visible. We then go down and hang around for a bit. When we get back, Bob is lying face down in his top bunk bed and there is a random person on the bed under mine. Originally I thought that the random guy was one of Bob's friends, but it turns out the 4th roommate checked out and the random guy was new. When we get back, you guessed it. The €5 bill was missing, but that's not all. I went to open my locker and my keys were not working on my padlock. I then realized that a broken piece of a key was in my padlock. At this point I was able to rule out any potential cleaning staff stealing from me, and if it wasn't obvious enough I knew it was Bob. At this point we're all talking about the situation and I look over at Bob and he's pretending to sleep face down in his bed. His head was slightly turned so he could look down onto the situation when he opened his eyes. At this point, I went down to the reception and after I told the manager this, combined with everything else that we already told him, it was finally enough of a reason for them to be able to kick him out. So one of the staff members comes up and walks up to the sleeping Bob and asks to talk with him outside of the room. He pretends to wake up and immediately says he didn't do anything. After several back and forth between the two he finally complies. At this point, while he's out of the room, I realize that I had a split chance to get revenge before Bob gets kicked out and I never see him again. Update, A-hole roommates tries to rob me, so I destroy everything he owns. I realized that there was no way I was going to get the cash back, so I counted it as a loss and began looking for ways to get even. On his bed he had his laptop, which was plugged in and charging. I grabbed the laptop, opened it and laid the screen side down. I then held the bottom side in place and began pulling the screen part upwards until I heard it snap. That's right. I snapped his laptop in half. But that's not all, we're just getting started. I looked through the rest of his stuff and I was able to find one of those card wallets in the back pocket of his pants. Unfortunately, there was no cash. However, there was a debit card and some other card, not sure exactly what it was since I quickly glanced at it. I grabbed the cards and snapped both of them in half. I then slipped the cards back in his bag. I continued looking for stuff and found a nice looking watch and a toothbrush. I picked up the toothbrush, snapped it in half and pocketed the watch. At this point, one of the staff members walks in and asks us all to leave while Bob packs up his stuff. We all complied and my roommates headed down to the lobby, but I had other plans. I left the hostel and walked 15 to 20 minutes to the river and you probably guessed where this was going. I got his watch and chucked it from the bridge into the river. At this point, I began walking back and felt satisfied about the revenge I was able to get, but a little disappointed I couldn't see his reaction. Well, this is where things get interesting. As I'm walking back I make a turn onto this long narrow street where my hostel is on and out of all odds, I see him walking in the same direction towards our hostel. He doesn't notice I'm behind him, but I'm just awkwardly walking behind him. As we're walking he lets out a loud F and what sounded like a sigh of defeat. Eventually he reached our hostel which is situated on the right of the direction we were walking. However, he doesn't turn right, and instead turns left into this tiny gas station shop that is selling a bunch of wine, beers and other alcohol. As I approach my hostel before turning right I glance to the left and see him trying to buy some alcohol. He doesn't notice me so I turn my head and continue walking to the right into our hostel. As I reach the first step of the stairs I take another glance behind me and not to sound cliché, but just like a movie, Bob is standing outside of the shop staring at me with a blank stare and a look of defeat. I continue walking and as I'm about to do the 180 turn to climb the rest of the stairs I give one last cold glance back at him and at that moment by the look on his face he knew that it was me who did that to him.